Hello, and we'll get started in just a moment. Okay, welcome everybody. Today we're going to be starting or continuing, as we do on every Thursday, Ethics of Our Fathers. As we do every Thursday, we take another chapter of Ethics of Our Fathers, as we've discussed before, that Ethics of Our Fathers is the custom that we study it during the summer months, every single week another chapter. Now we are up to chapter 3. Chapter 3 begins, why a fellow by the name of Akavya, the son of Mahalalel, says the following. Look at 3 things and you will make sure, and when looking at these 3 things, you will not come to do a sin. What are they? Know where you come from, know where you're going, and know that eventually everybody's going to have to give justification and a detailed report. And he continues to explain, where do you come from? You come from mitipa srucha, from a putrid drop. You're going to a place of earth and worms, and you're going to have to give an account in front of the supreme being, the supreme King of Kings. So first of all, on the outset, there's an interesting Hasidic paraphrasing of this verse, which is Akavya ben Mahalalel. The word Akavya in Hebrew can also mean a heel. The word Mahalalel means to praise. Over here, the first words of the Mishnah are telling us, Akavya, that when a person praises God, when a person thanks God, it has to be even from his heel, his whole entire essence, his entire body should be the one giving thanks to God. It shouldn't be just a lip service, but it should penetrate and permeate the individual even to the heel. Then he goes on to say, that by looking and thinking into these 3 things, you won't come to do any sin. A person is made up of 2 things, a soul and a body. Everything in this world has a soul and a body, a spiritual and a physical, a selfish and a selfless, an infinite and a finite. So too the human being has the soul, which is selfless, infinite, spiritual, and it has the body, which is selfish, materialistic, and physical. And the 2 come together as God puts them into this world to accomplish and do a mission in making this world a godly place. So the first thing, when we come into this world and we know where we come from, what is the physical body's makeup is only a putrid drop. What makes the physical body? If not for the soul, there's nothing to the body. If not for your objective that you have to accomplish and do Torah and mitzvahs and make this world a spiritual place, your body's nothing. It's a putrid drop. Oh, so you may say, well, I'll live a life and have a life of luxuries and materialism. But where's it going to end up? Back into the ground. And so what? What have you accomplished if you've went and decorated and done all these beautiful things if your soul hasn't done anything? The only part of you that's eternal is your soul. And if you haven't done anything to change your soul, to develop your soul, to cultivate your soul, then what have you done? You've made a putrid drop into a little bit of worms. Same thing, nothing changed. So God puts us into this world, and if you look at the magnificent miracle that God takes and trusts us and says, listen here, I'm going to trust you, the body, to be a guardian for the soul and accomplish your task. And when the time comes, after 120, you'll come up above and you'll have to give an account. The very fact that I energized this putrid drop, the very fact that I gave life and energy and made this selfish, materialistic drop into something of worth, what did you do with it? Did you use it for the right purpose? Or you were just embellishing the drop until it became a worm? Over here, we see how the Mishnah tells us and puts things in perspective. What Akavya does, he puts the outlook of how we view things in perspective. Who is Akavya ben Mahalalel? Akavya ben Mahalalel was a student of Yehuda ben Tamai and Shimon ben Shatach that we spoke about before. They were colleagues of Shmai and Avtalion. They were in the era of the Second Temple. We don't know much about him, but later when he was young, but later in life he became famous, that to the extent that they would look at him with the respect, though he doesn't have his name. Many of the rabbis say Rabbi before his name. In this case, it just calls him Akavya, because since his name, he was not known who he was at the time, and therefore he usually was a singular opinion, and therefore he didn't gain that great respect, so to speak, from others. There was once an argument between the majority of the Chachamim, the majority of the sages, and Akavya regarding the specific laws. And Akavya held his opinion because that's what he heard majority. That's what he heard it from the majority of the sages from the previous generation. And still in all, they stood against him, but he stood his ground. He was pretty stubborn. Later on, and when he was on his deathbed, he told his son to go tell the sages that he actually heard it from the majority of sages, because initially he didn't want to claim right to it as not to contradict him. They asked him, his son asked him then, when to put in a good word for the Chachamim, he refused, saying that a person's actual deed should speak for himself, and he was not of the opinion that just because your father accomplished much or because you have connections in better places, you should be able to get to good places. So he was a person who was a very humble person, lived, as we said, in the time of the era of the Second Temple, towards the end of it, where things were deteriorating for the spirituality of Jewish people. And in this case, he looked very much so to put the Jewish people on a straight path. And that's why he uses the terminology of, so to speak, very strict and to the point to show them of what's going on. Another thing was Akavya was a very humble person. And that's why he was called by his name Akavya, which means by the heel. And again, looking at these 3 points that he teaches the Jewish people, which is remember where you're coming from, know where you're going, and realize that everybody's going to have give an account. Another interesting thing that we look into this Mishnah that he's teaching us, which is the concept that many times we give focus into things which are only temporary. Is a very famous story of the Maggid of Mezrich, that the Maggid of Mezrich was a man with very few means. When once somebody came to his home and he saw he had no furniture in his house. So he asked him, Rabbi, how come you have no furniture in your house? You barely have a bed to sleep on and a table to eat by. So he asked this businessman, well, you travel. When you travel, do you take all your furniture with you? So he said, not at all. I'm just traveling. Why would I take my furniture with me? So the Maggid of Mezrich told him, so too in this world, it's only a journey. Why should I take all my furniture with me? This world, as we see from the first Mishnah, is a journey. Every single part, the very fact that God gave us the body and soul to work in tandem, is to help us along the journey and ultimately come to the destination, the world to come, when the world is in its perfection. Here's another Mishnah, which I think the next Mishnah we're going to learn is very important and pertinent, especially today's crazy times. Rabbi Hanina, the chief assistant to the Kohen Gadol, said, pray for the well-being and the success of the government, because if not for the fear of government, people would swallow each other alive. Now, generally, this is a book of ethics of our fathers. This is a book of teaching us laws of Torah, how one should embellish their relationship with God. What over here is he telling us? Now, over here, when it talks about the peace of the government, simply spoken, what is it saying here is that we as an obligation as the Jewish people have to pray for the government that they should be successful. Regardless if we agree, if it's Democrat, Republican, we have to know that a government is an important thing. If not, anarchy will break out, as we've seen, unfortunately, what happens. Now, what does it mean, government? Does it mean that we agree with all the policies of the government? Absolutely not. Does it mean we agree with the principles of the government? Absolutely not. But what we do agree with is that there has to be a governing body. There has to be red lights. There has to be stop signs. There has to be enforcement of police. There has to be some type of governing rule, or else people will destroy each other. Anarchy breaks course. So though not all governments are not righteous, and maybe they might not do the right thing, that's the first step that the Mishnah says. Pray for them. If you got a problem and if you think that the government isn't behaving in the right way, have a mispal, pray for the peace of the government. You should be praying that they should not be corrupt, they should not be wicked, they should not be perverted, they should not be anything. They should be proper governing bodies that should be able to do things in a just and proper way. As Jewish people and as people of God that have a body and soul, which this comes in connection to what Rakavia started off saying, that the way we make sure that we don't sin is that we also pray for those people who may not be doing the right thing. An interesting story is told about Rabbi Meir and his wife Beruria. Rabbi Meir was haunted by his neighbors, who was a mafia. They were trying to run him out of town because of his teachings of Torah. Jewish people. And Rabbi Meir said, you know what, I'm going to pray to God that these people should find a miserable end. His wife, Beruria, heard what happened, and she quoted him a verse of Psalm 106. It says, Yetamu chatoim, may the sins end, not the sinners. Why pray that they should have a terrible demise? Pray that they should repent. Rabbi Meir said, true indeed. And Rabbi Meir prayed that these people should repent. And they indeed did, and they became one of his greatest followers. We see over here that if we disagree with somebody or something, we don't have to always wish demise or detriment or bad on those people. Unfortunately, we open today's social media and we see, if I disagree with somebody, that person's a tyrant, the evil, and every other name word that you want to give them. What this Mishnah tells us, pure ethics, is if you disagree even with a government, heavy mispalo bishloima, pray for its good. Pray that they should repent. Pray that they should have some peace. Some common sense should get knocked into them. Unfortunately, today we see people, dictators. We see people who are in government and doing things that we may agree or disagree with. But how do we react to it? That's the Mishnah telling us. What do we say to it? What is our response? Is our response, well, one response is in the ballot. That's a very good response. We use our democratic option. But while they're in office, even though it may not have been our choice, government is something important, and we should pray on their behalf. Pray that they be successful. Pray that they do the right thing. Pray that they follow God's laws, the 7 Noahide laws that are set for all nations of the world. This is a very important concept, especially in today's day and age, and how we watch things unfold in front of our eyes. Government is not only talking about the government, where the government of America or any other country that we call in the classic frame of government. But a government also applies to our governing bodies, meaning ourselves, we are an empire. Our human body, ourself, is an empire. Our governing bodies are our lips, our eyes, our ears, our hands, the things we do, think, and smell, and think about and see. We need to pray to God that we look at the right things, we see the right things, we hear the right things, we speak the right things. That we should make sure that the word shalom doesn't only mean peace, but also means wholesome, complete. When we are at peace, because think about it, when there's strife, you're broken into shards. But when there's peace, you're complete, you're wholesome, you're great. Peace in mind, peace in heart will bring wholesomeness to the individual. We ask of God, and what the sage is telling us in our Mishnah, pray to the Almighty that you should have peace, you should have wholesomeness, you should feel completion, you should feel fulfillment in life. You should feel that your hands, your eyes, your mouth, your nose are all in unison. They're complete and wholesome, fulfilling the mission that God has tasked us with. The biggest blessing that any of us can have is that we shouldn't be broken. We shouldn't be in broken pieces. We shouldn't be anarchy within ourselves. We should feel wholesome, complete, resolute with what we are about to do, what we're out to do, what our job is to do in this world, making this world a wholesome place, a beautiful place, a place for all. God bless you. Have a wonderful day. And that God should give us all that blessing, that we should be able to govern our body to feel wholesome, complete, and beautiful. All the best. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow, 1 p.m., discussing this week's Torah reading. Lots of interesting stuff. See you tomorrow, 1 p.m.